All right. So you've just turned in homework number 8, right? Okay. So I haven't yet got it posted, but I'll put that up just after class. Homework number 9 will be due a week from today, on the 23rd. And class next Monday is going to be online. We won't have an in-person class meeting on Monday. So I'll just put the link on YouTube, or I'll put the lecture on YouTube and send you an email of the link and post it on Blackboard as well. But I'll be in New Mexico doing an ABET accreditation visit at another university. So I won't be able to give you a live lecture that day. But then we'll just be back to our normal schedule on Wednesday next week. So if you have any questions on the homework, you'll need to send me an email. Teams won't work for Monday, but you can also call me on Teams on Tuesday the 22nd if you've got questions on homework number 9. We're continuing talking about ways we can analyze public sector projects and services. And remember that the difficulty with those came up because they don't generate profit. And it's hard for us to evaluate which alternative is best using our previous tools, which are both based on rate of return mainly, if a project just exists to lose money, or maybe that's the wrong way to think about it. It doesn't exist to lose money, but it's providing services that aren't directly being compensated for. So cost effectiveness analysis is another way to evaluate organizations that generate services that are for the public benefit. So this also comes from chapter 9 in the book, if you're following along there. So sometimes it becomes difficult enough to quantify the economic benefits of a project that benefit cost analysis isn't feasible. You know, like I was telling you that there are economists and estimators who it's their job to try and quantify the dollar value of something like increased recreational opportunities. But sometimes when quantifying the dollar equivalent of the benefits of a project, sometimes when it gets just too abstract, what we do instead is just focus on the costs. And for multiple organizations that are generating the same benefit, if we say that the benefits are equivalent, then let's just focus on minimizing the cost. So cost effectiveness analysis, which we're talking about today, takes that approach. And a case where you might apply it would be, improvements that are intended to improve roadway safety, where maybe it's possible to estimate the revenue that's generated from a red light traffic intersection camera, but maybe it wouldn't be possible to estimate what is the dollar value of the increased safety. Like if you think about a reduction of accidents, that has economic benefits to the insurance companies. The reduction in accidents benefits the employer because their employees aren't out of work after they've been injured in an accident. It benefits the schools because children aren't missing classes if they haven't been hurt in an accident. So it's hard to maybe put a dollar value to all of that, so sometimes we don't even bother. The same might be true of some government services, like services to evaluate people's ID and generate a passport. It's hard to know what is the dollar benefit of the passport office, but what we could definitely do is identify what the costs of operating offices are in different locations. And there's several different regional offices that process passport applications, and so you might be reasonably expected to evaluate how efficient are each of those offices at generating a service. Same thing is true of things like healthcare. Providing healthcare to people, sometimes it's hard to know exactly what the economic benefits of getting seniors to take their heart medication or their blood pressure medication, or if you lower somebody's cholesterol by a certain amount, what is the long-term dollar benefit of that? We don't always necessarily know, and it may not be necessary in order to compare different hospitals to each other, or to compare different for-profit healthcare management organizations to each other. So the cost effectiveness analysis approach is applied to service-related projects generally, where intangibles are being provided to individuals or businesses. And intangibles mean things that you can't directly measure or quantify. So it's not a road, it's not a bridge, but intangibles are services like accounting or policing. So intangibles are things where it would be difficult to say what is the direct benefit of it, and it'd be difficult to hold the thing in your hand or point to it after it's been rendered. So here's a list of different services that we can think of as intangibles. And we use cost effectiveness analysis simply when the benefits are too difficult to estimate, or if we would have a lot of error in estimating them. And so if you don't know, for example, what's the benefit of traffic cameras, then maybe you ought to just focus on the costs of different ways of enhancing public safety. So you could list the different ways that traffic cameras are beneficial, but then translating that into dollar amounts is a challenge. So instead of that, we just ignore the B, and we focused on different aspects of the costs in the numerator of cost effectiveness analysis. But then in the denominator, we have some measure of effectiveness. So what it usually is a measure of productivity. Like, for instance, the number of passport applications that are processed in a month. If you were comparing the New Orleans passport processing office to the Washington, D.C. passport processing office, then you might know how much the rent is and the electricity and different costs that go into keeping that office open. And then the measure of their effectiveness could just simply be how many applications they're processing during a month. Or it could be maybe the number of fraudulent passport applications they identify in a month. So some sort of a numerical measure of how effective they are at providing the service that they generate. So let's put this cost effectiveness analysis into an example here. I'd like just to illustrate for you one way that we could apply this technique. Let's say that here in West Virginia there are 5 different offices that process commercial driving licenses. And this is all hypothetical, by the way. But let's just say that there was an office in Beckley, Huntington, Charleston, Weston, and Richwood. And we know that each one of those offices has a certain operations cost. That might be related to the salary of the people that are working there. It maybe be a function of their utilities or the rent of that office. But if we just add up all the costs in a month and then divide it by the number of hours that they're open, then this is the number of dollars per hour that's associated with the cost of their operations. And as a measure of effectiveness, we could look at how many licenses they process per month at each of those locations. So the question is, in cost effectiveness analysis, which of these offices should be funded? Remember that we do this analysis to make decisions or to choose from among alternatives. And in public sector projects, we'd like to provide as much service as we can, but there's limited budgets. So maybe we don't have enough money to keep Beckley, Huntington, Charleston, Weston, and Richwood open. You know, if you have to do cuts, then you should prioritize the offices that are the most efficient. And that's what this cost effectiveness analysis will allow us to do, is it'll allow us to identify if you have a budget of $2,300 per hour to have these offices open, then which ones should be prioritized. So let me show you what the technique is for this. I'm going to start up a fresh Excel spreadsheet. And you can follow along if you like, or you can just watch, because the in-class exercise that we have for today will be doing the similar thing. Let me copy this table and paste it into my spreadsheet here. You won't be able to do that, I'm sorry to say. All right, so we've got the offices, the costs, and then some measure of their effectiveness. So this is the cost per hour. Let's turn it into the cost per month, because we know that they're open, these offices, 160 hours per month. So this is the cost in terms of operations in dollars per month. So it would just be the operations cost per hour times 160 to get the operations cost per month. And the effectiveness is already in terms of licenses per month. So the C to E ratio, cost to effectiveness, is going to be, since we know the cost per month and the licenses per month, if we divide the two, it's going to be the number of dollars that are spent for each license renewal. Okay, so cost in the numerator, have the operations cost, the licenses per month that are being processed in the denominator here. And so let me ask you this. With these values, do we want to have a high number or a low number? What's considered good here? High or low? Why is low better?
It means less cost compared to the efficiency.
Less cost. Yeah, it's, do you want to spend $77 for each license that you renew, or do you want to spend $8 for each license that you renew? Well, obviously, if you're a government agency and you have a limited budget, you want to get as many people through the system as possible. And one way of looking at that is how much are you spending for each license that gets processed. And so the best one is the lowest. So this is asking if you have so which office is most efficient and which is least efficient. So the most efficient office is the Huntington office. The least efficient is the Beckley office. And, you know, it might not be their fault. We're not saying that the people in the Beckley office are doing anything wrong necessarily. It might just be that there's not very much demand down there. Or it could be that they have excessively high operations cost. But the combination of the two is such that their efficiency is poor. Their cost per license renewal is $77.14. So if we were going to try and optimize our operations, then what we're going to see is that they are at the bottom of the list. So let me copy all of this. So Control C and paste it below there. And I'm going to now order it in terms of the most efficient at the top and the least efficient at the bottom here. So I've highlighted the C to E. I wonder if it will let me just sort the rows that I'm on. So let's sort it smallest to largest and expand the selection so that it does the other columns as well. It didn't do that, right? Let's try that again. Okay, highlight it. Let's sort from smallest to largest. Expand the selection. Boy, it usually sorts. I'm not sure what's going on. I'll have to manually do it, I guess. So Huntington's at the top. Beckley, I'm going to move to the bottom of the list. Sometimes when I'm zoomed in, it's hard to grab rows. There it is. All right. Yeah, so now it's sorted. The best at the top, then progressively less efficient as we get to the bottom. And the reason why we want to do that is we want to know the cumulative cost. So all of these titles are the same here, but we're going to add one more column, and that's the cumulative cost. And so this is the dollars per hour, because what we know from the problem statement is that there's a limit of how much money that can be spent. $2,300 per hour can be spent to keep these offices open. And so if we have only the Huntington office open, then the cumulative cost is just $450 per hour. If we have Huntington and Charleston open, then it's the $450 plus the $1,100 that is associated with Charleston. All right, so if we now add Weston to the list, meaning that we have Weston, Charleston, and Huntington operational, then it will be the previous total plus the amount for this row for the operations cost. So, we can just drag this down and it will tell us how much we're spending based on which offices are open. And so the budget limit is $2,300 per hour. So the way to maximize the number of applications that are being processed is to have Huntington, Charleston, and Weston in operation. Based on this, we should have Huntington, Charleston, and Weston offices open. Now, with that, how many licenses per month are we going to be processing? Based on those 3 offices being open, then we will process those 3, so 31,400 licenses per month. So no other combination would be greater than that. Like if we had Huntington, Charleston, and Richwood, then we wouldn't be maximizing the number of the amount of effectiveness. So the key here is to sort the data based on the most efficient at the top, meaning the minimal cost per effectiveness, and the least effective at the bottom. So does anybody have any questions about that method? It's just another tool in our toolbox that allows us to identify which alternative is the most valuable. So here's the in-class exercise that we're going to work on today. It's a hypothetical scenario where there's a Wildlife Protection Foundation. They have a budget of $5 million per year. And there's 5 different organizations that's trying to receive funding. And what we want to do is rank these organizations in terms of their effectiveness. So we'll do the same thing as before, where we'll calculate their costs, and then we're going to calculate how much money is spent by each organization for each poacher that they arrest, because that's what these different organizations do, apparently, is they send people in to police different wildlife areas with endangered gorillas, and they're trying to arrest poachers. So we're going to calculate the total cost of operation for each organization, the cost effectiveness ratio, and then with a $5 million budget limitation, you'll rank this, you'll sort it by efficiency, and there's an important stipulation here that no programs can be partially funded. So this is just saying that either you satisfy their full required budget or not at all. But the question is, which of these should receive funding in order to maximize the number of poachers that are arrested each year? All right, so let me hand out the paper. All right, so the first thing you'll obviously have to translate this into Excel, but then that same process that we went through in this one, you're going to be repeating for this wildlife protection example. So I'll leave this up on the screen to kind of give you reminders of what the procedure was. For the cumulative amount spent, it should be based on the total cost, not based on the poachers that are arrested. So this poachers arrested is just to give us an idea about the relative efficiency of each organization. But the cumulative amount spent, if we say that organization C, which is Habitat XP, that they're getting funded, then how much do we have to spend to fund their organization? $168,000. And if we fund organization C and organization A, then it would be the previous amount, that which is the one above it, plus this total cost from organization A. So then now that we have the template of the formula here, which is the cell above and the cell to the left, then we would drag that down through each of the rows, and you'll notice that this is over the limit. So the most we can afford to spend would be to operate organizations C, A, and E. So that's what we should do. We want to spend as much of our budget as we can. We want to spend it on the most efficient organizations. So the answer to part C is, which organizations should be selected for funding? We should fund organizations C, A, and E. And then it asks the question, if past trends continue, how many poachers would be arrested each year? So that means we're getting the poachers from organization C, A, and E. So we would arrest, let me just do the math there, the sum of 78, 85, and 332. So 495. That would be the number of poachers that get arrested each year. 495 if we are funding organizations C, A, and E. And I guess we could prove it to ourselves, like, are there other combinations that would be under the the $5 million budget limit? Let's see, if we did D and E, down here at the bottom it says the sum, it's actually over the limit. It's 5,020,000. So that wouldn't work because it's over the limit. E and D, but even if it was, it's only 366 poachers. So what if it was D, C, A, so we're at 2 million, and B, 3.5 million. So everyone except for E, the budget is 3.5 million, where the limit is 5. So that's acceptable. It's under the limit, but let's see how many poachers it would be. 264. So that's not optimum. It seems like by rank ordering these in most efficient at the top and progressively becoming least efficient, then we were able to successfully identify the combination of alternatives that would maximize the efficiency for the budget that's available. And this is pretty closely related to what we'll go over in the recorded lecture for Monday of next week. That one's about budget limits as well, and we're putting together what are called bundles. Bundles are just like different combinations of alternatives. And so what I was doing just now is I was identifying different bundles. Like, so right now it seems like the best bundle of opportunities is C, A, and E. Those three together gets us the 495. So do you see down here, when you've got certain cells highlighted, then it'll tell you the average, the count, and the sum. So you don't even have to do the formula necessarily. If you just want to very quickly see what is like the sum of some answers, you can just highlight the cells, and then down here it tells you the sum. So like if I want to know the cost of E, B, and D, I just highlight that, and then down here it tells me $6.5 million. Kind of a nice feature that Excel has. But anyways, back to the bundling. It's just a combination of alternatives. And so we'll come back to this idea on Monday of next week as well about bundles. Okay, in the paper that I've given you, the in-class exercise, let me pull up on the back side. There's a question as well. So I'm asking this question just to kind of set the stage for some of the calculations you need to do on the project. So let's just say, for example, that last year you personally had $25,684.98 in your savings balance, and that it earns 5.2% per year. So then I tell you your income this year and your expenses. So what is your cumulative savings balance at the end of this year if you take into account the new money that comes in plus the interest on last year's savings balance and then last year's savings balance? So this year's cumulative savings balance will have three components going into it. It'll be the difference between your income and expenses. It will be the earnings on last year's balance plus last year's balance. So calculate how much will be in your account at the end of this year. So this is the same thing you're going to do in the project. In the project, you're going to find out every year how much money do you have saved. And the amount of money you have at the end of the year is last year's savings balance plus the interest that you made on last year's savings balance plus the new money that comes in this year. So the new money that came in this year is the difference between your income and your expenses. And ideally, you want to make those two as far apart as possible. You want to have big income and low expenses. And the net difference between the two is what you can save. But this is important. You don't earn interest on the amount that you just barely put into the bank. And that's one of the mistakes I see pretty commonly on the project, is that when people are calculating their cumulative savings balance, they'll assume they're earning interest on the 5480, or like that's what this is for this example, but they include the money that was just barely put into the bank in what's earning the interest, and it's not. It's the prior year's balance that you earn this year's yield on. So I just wanted to make that point through the in-class exercise. Okay, that's all we've got for today. I'm going to load your next homework assignment onto Blackboard. It'll be there in just a few minutes, but that homework 9 is due a week from today. And then the project, we're just over a month away for the project as well, so please get started on that.